Hey there everyone! It's nearing the middle of July now, and that means it's finally time for me to sit myself down and film the mid-year reading tag. I'm a tad bit late as usual, just as I was last year for the same tag, but since this is a tag that I'm always really excited about and I watch a lot on BookTube, I just wanted to make my own version of it this year as well. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the questions about the books that I read halfway through the year of 2025. So I read a sum total of 49 books by June, which isn't too bad. It is about my half-yearly average. I was really close to reaching a very satisfying round 50, but 49 is pretty good as it is. And now for the very first question. What is the best book you've read so far in 2025? Unfortunately, this year hasn't really been granting me a lot of 5-star reads. It's been a pretty abysmal first half of the year. Don't get me wrong, I am reading a bunch of really good books, but nothing that really falls into the best books of the year category. But I do have a couple of 5-star reads that I do want to share with you all, and these are all middle grade ones, so make of that what you will. What can I say? Middle grade is a genre that really has had my back this year, and I am extremely grateful for that. The very first book on the list is Batu and the Search for the Golden Cup. This is definitely the best book I've read so far this year. After I read this, I couldn't stop thinking of this for like a month straight. This book is like Percy Jackson but with Kazakh mythology. It is set in Kazakhstan and it is actually a book in translation. So it was written originally in Russian by two Kazakh authors and then it got translated into English, which is just so cool. This book was absolutely perfect in every way. It follows our main character Batu, who's this 12-year-old living in Almaty, which is the financial capital of Kazakhstan. He's just going about his life. But one day, a person who is very historically and culturally important to Kazakhstan, the Golden Warrior, kind of like a mythological figure, steps out of the illustrated cover of Batu's notebook and into his life, just kind of summoning him on a quest to find the Golden Cup, which can supposedly restore harmony to the world. And what follows is this super cool adventure all across Kazakhstan. And this story blends together real history and geography with mythology and culture and tradition so well. And I will highly recommend this book to anyone who loves middle grade, fantasy, and the mythological aspects, which were all really combined well in the Percy Jackson series. So if you're a fan of that, definitely read Batu and the Search for the Golden Cup. Another 5-star book which I read this year, kind of similar to Batu and the Search for the Golden Cup, that is Zachary Ng and the Dragon Emperor by Siran J. Zhao. So I follow the author on YouTube where they have an excellent channel about Chinese history and mythology and culture. And their debut book, Iron Widow, was also one that I gave 5 stars to. So this book, I knew I would really enjoy it and I wasn't wrong. This follows our main character Zachary, whose VR headset gets possessed by the spirit of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, and he has to go on a quest all the way to China to free his mother's trapped soul. I love how the author was able to so humorously explain so many important parts of imperial Chinese history, and it was so well done, especially the commentary on the state of minorities in China, how they're treated by the CCP from the perspective of Zachary, who is part of a minority ethnicity himself, being Hui, and the author is also Hui, which I had no idea about. Pretty cool in a lot of ways, really funny, and I will highly recommend it to anyone who loves books like Percy Jackson. And then for the final book for this prompt, that is Dancing with Charleston by Jacqueline Wilson. This was my very first 5-star read of the year, and it really gave me all of those nostalgic feels of reading an Enid Blyton book, sans the xenophobia and racism. Love that this book isn't like that. But yeah, this follows our main character Mona in 1920s England, where she lives with her aunt in the caretaker's hut on the grounds of this very lavish mansion. And when the head of the household passes and a new person inherits that position, Mona's life is kind of upended and she takes that as an opportunity to improve her and her aunt's livelihoods. This book definitely captures that summer in the English countryside vibe so perfectly, with picnics galore and dinner parties and forging new friendships and just navigating life as a child. And now moving on to the next question, that is the best sequel you've read so far in 2025. So I don't really do a great job at keeping up with series. Like I start new ones all the time, but do I ever get to the sequels? Very rarely. And this year I have read like a few of them, and I guess I can name two, which I think are pretty good sequels. The first one isn't a direct sequel, but more like a spin-off series to an already completed duology, and that is Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong, which is the spin-off of These Violent Delights, following different characters from the original duology. This one was so much better than These Violent Delights because I hated the MC in that, Juliet Tsai. I thought she was insufferable. This one we follow her cousin, Rosalind Long, and she's so much better. Extremely practical, no-nonsense persona, and I love that for her. The romance in this one was also very well developed, especially because the main character is on the age spectrum, and I think this book did a beautiful job of showing that. Always love to see more representation about people like me in literature. This is set in 1930s Shanghai during the time of the Civil War between the communists and the nationalists, and it is basically an espionage thriller with a dash of fantasy, and it's so good. And then the next one in this category is the fifth book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series by Shannon Messenger, that is Everblaze. And this one we follow our main character Sophie, who in the first book discovers that she's actually an elf and basically gets whisked away to the elven lands where she has to attend this magical academy. She forms a lot of friends and tries to unravel the huge conspiracy surrounding her very existence, because there's a lot of things suspicious about how she came to be. If you're looking for a really good middle grade fantasy series to sink your teeth into, then this is the one for you. It has excellent world building, and each of the books are at least 500 to 600 pages long. A bit long for a middle grade, but I love thick books, so it totally works for me. And now moving on to the third question, which is new releases you haven't read yet but want to. Once again, I don't really keep up with new releases that well. Once in a while, I do see some on my Goodreads recommendations, and I do click on the want to read, save them for later. Do I get around to them? Well, occasionally. But yeah, here's a list of books that I do want to read soon, because they're either sequels to series which I already adore or by authors whose works I have tremendously enjoyed in the past. So firstly, we have Oathbound, which is the third book in the Legendborn series by Tracy Deonn. This one is basically Arthurian legend meets urban fantasy with a dash of paranormal stuff going on. Excellent commentary on the lives of Black people in America from colonial times to the present. I've read books 1 and 2. Second book gave me some mixed feelings because there was kind of cheating in the story, which I really despise, but I hope this one kind of resolves that and I'm not left with a bitter taste in my mouth during certain interactions. Another book we have is The Geographer's Map to Romance by India Holton. This is part of a historical fantasy romance series set in Victorian England, following different people in academia as they fall in love, and there's also weird magic going haywire in England. The first one in the series, that is The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, I read it this year, absolutely adored it, so I know that I have to get to this really soon. Also because we have a marriage of convenience, which is one of my favorite tropes in romance books, so I'm really excited about that. Holy Terrors by Margaret Owen. This is the third book in the Little Thieves trilogy. I've read books 1 and 2, absolutely adored the first one, perfect book, no notes. Second book, the main character did a lot of things that extremely frustrated me. The ending was like the most unsatisfying cliffhanger ever, so I need to know how things are resolved in this third book. And I'm praying that it goes according to how I want it to, otherwise I might have to throw the book. Because how dare this book frustrate me like this? Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. So she's the author of the extremely famous Six Crimson Cranes duology and also Spin the Dawn, that duology which I have read. Six Crimson Cranes is something that I need to read really soon so that I can go into A Forgery of Fate, which I believe is a spin-off. Like all of these books are in kind of the same world. And then Divining the Leaves by Shweta Thakrar. This is an author who I've read the debut of, Star Daughter, absolutely adored it. She writes really good fantasy standalones inspired by Hindu mythology with Indian main characters and really fun romantic subplots which are never eye-roll inducing. I've only read Star Daughter, but I know her other book that's out, Dream Runners, is also good. So each of her books focuses on different mythical beings. The first one, Star Daughter, was about Apsaras. The second one is about Nagas, and this one, Divining the Leaves, is about Yakshas, who are forest sprites. I'm pretty excited to check out this story and see the unique spin that she brings to the myths that I'm familiar with. And then we have a book in this absolutely favorite subgenre of mine in fantasy, and that is Cinderella and the Beast, or Beauty and the Glass Slipper. This is part of the Princess Swap series by Kim Bussing, and it's part of that subgenre called fairy tale mashups. They're different from reimaginings, because in mashups you have characters from different fairy tales all interacting together and influencing each other's stories, and it has really funny takes on all of these fairy tales that we're familiar with. And this one basically follows Cinderella and Belle, but what if they get swapped with each other and now they have to figure out someone else's issue? And then finally, Solving for the Unknown by Lon Le. This is kind of a companion novel to the author's debut that came out a while ago. That is a Pearl love story. I read that last year, absolutely loved it. And this one follows two characters from that book. They're side characters in that one, and this they get their own romance. So the main characters, one of their sisters and the other one's best friend. And in this one of them is a biology major in college and the other is a forensic science major. And I love to see the STEM representation. Moving on to the fourth question, that is the most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. Again, I don't really keep an eye on these, but some of them I just looked up just to answer this prompt. And firstly, we have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. This comes out in August, I'm pretty sure. It's similar in tone to her book Babel. And this follows two Cambridge students who literally have to descend into the 9 circles of hell to get a recommendation letter from their dead professor in order to advance their academic career. And this has a lot of commentary on the world of academia in general, workload, stress that affects students, and also it kind of explains a lot of classic literature, including Dante's Inferno, which I guess is the core of this story. And we have Among the Burning Flowers by Samantha Shannon. This is a novella set in the same world as The Priory of the Orange Tree. Once again, one of my absolute favorite 5-star fantasy reads of all time. This is set during the same time as Priory, and it follows a set of characters who are kind of minorly featured in the original book, and it's set in a different part of the world, and we follow them as they try to deal with the threat that is endangering their country. And I think it sounds really cool because from what I got of these characters in the book, they really did intrigue me, and I love to see more, lore about the world of the Priory, so I'm definitely checking this out. Next, we have The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. Again, companion novel to her book The Spell Shop that came out last year. I read it, really enjoyed it. So this one is definitely on my radar to check out. It follows a character who is very peripherally mentioned in The Spell Shop. She's basically the creator of the main character of that book's assistant spider plant, basically. And in this, she runs away from her kind of imprisonment. She becomes a fugitive hiding out in a greenhouse, and she strikes up a relationship with the caretaker of the greenhouse. It sounds just as cozy and magical and whimsical as The Spell Shop, and I'm really excited to read this one because I do need all the cozy fantasy reads I can find. Next, we have Never Ever After, which is the newest book by Su Lin Tan. That is the author of Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology. I really adored that one. I've read everything else by her that is currently out, and it's crazy how she already published a book this year, Immortal, back in January, and now she's out with a new book in like October or something. What is going on? How does she write this fast? This is a Cinderella retelling? Is it? I'm not actually sure. It might be. It again is set in the same world as all of her other books, but they're very independent stories. You just kind of get a bit more lore about the world in each book. That's it. You can enjoy them on their own. And now for a couple of middle grades that I'm looking forward to. We have The Forbidden Room, which is the second book in The Last Hope School for Magical Delinquents by Nikki Popetro. Again, read the first book last year. Really enjoyed it. It has all of the tropes that I love in middle grade, like a magical boarding school, found family, the friendships that you make, and also a mysterious threat that you have to band together to fight. The first book kind of had a Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children kind of situation where you have all of these kids with different powers teaming up to stop the threat. And it was just so heartwarming and fun. Can't wait to continue with the series. And then there's middle grade short story anthology called The Beasts Beneath the Winds. And it's basically about Southeast Asian folklore and myths about different magical creatures. And it's kind of adaptations of that. It basically follows different kids as they interact with each of these creatures through, I don't know how many stories are there, 16 or 17 of them. I can't wait to check it out because I think Southeast Asian folklore from all of those countries there, it's just so fascinating and I can't wait to learn more. And now the fifth question, that is the biggest disappointment of the year. And unfortunately, that is Immortal by Su Lin Tan. So a disappointment to me isn't a book that is per se bad, but a book that I had really high expectations for, and those just got dashed into smithereens. And this is one such book because, as I mentioned, loved Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So I read this the very month it came out, and it just read like a first draft. Like the author was just pitching this idea and then speed run the whole writing process before it got properly edited. It just felt very empty, and it did have all of the incredible writing of Su Lin Tan, which is the only reason that this got more than 3 stars for me. I gave it, I think, 3.25, 3.5 or something. But the plot was just so wafer thin and really crazy when you think about it. The main character, Lian, got on my nerves, and the way they explain away so many of the weird character dynamics with the most K-drama plot twists of all time, if you know, you know. Why was this book written like that? It felt like it was just catering to the romantasy crowd that is having an increasingly stronger voice in the publishing industry, to the extent that these weird tropes influence the writing of perfectly good writers who have great stories as it is. And in this book, you can feel those tropes bleeding into the story and just making it an absolute mess. Yeah, I don't know. Where is the Su Lin Tan from Daughter of the Moon Goddess? I really hope her new book feels more like that one and not like Immortal, because if it is, I might have to stop checking out her books because I'm just so disappointed. My heart's broken. And then the next question, which is the biggest surprise. And for that, I will say welcome to the Hyunam bookshop, but for very strange reasons than you might think. So I already knew I was going to love this book because the whole premise of a woman being so burnt out by her corporate cutthroat life that she just takes a break and opens a bookshop. It just sounds so magical, and it was. I absolutely loved the book. But the surprising thing about it was that this extremely cozy, comforting book, which is literally marketed as healing fiction, gave me existential dread. Yeah, that's right. I got scared reading Welcome to the Hyunam bookshop. And that's because it really talks about the world of employment and adulting. And I had all of these ideas about how my life will be once I get a job and I'm earning. And this book kind of just felt like being thrown into an icy cold lake, in that I really woke up from my delusions. Turns out being an adult is actually really terrifying, and now I am very scared for my future. As a person who's just about to enter university, oh god, like hearing the stories of some of the people in this book, I am petrified of the corporate world now. But yeah, setting that aside, it was a really good book. Kind of as I expected, this was the only surprising element to it. And oh boy, was it a surprise. Another book that surprised me in that I was expecting it to be worse than it turned out to be, and that is A Coat of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So, you know, it is a book talk darling. Everyone screams about it as like, oh, such an excellent romantasy read. And usually when I hear about books marketed like this with a lot of hype around them, I'm a bit skeptical. But I did want to check it out. And I mean, this wasn't a fantastic book or anything. It was a very solid 3.75 stars, which is more than I thought I would give it. I loved the kind of folktale-esque atmosphere to it, especially the setting in the fairy realm. And I thought the whole trial situation we had going on in the second half was just so fun and addictive to read. Will I continue on with this series? Probably not, because I'm fine leaving it off where it ended. It did have a satisfying standalone arc, and I don't think I want to stick around for any creepy, agonizing love triangles. especially not after we really get introduced to Resand, who a lot of people scream about on Book Talk. He is a really disgusting creep who outright assaults our main character, and yeah, that's not cool. I don't want to be there for when they get together. So yeah, I'm out of the series. Did like the first book other than that element, and I'm surprised. Now for the 7th question, that is favorite new author. This may be a debut author or just new to you, and for that I will say India Holton, who is the author of The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love. Excellent writing. I was just laughing out loud throughout the entire book. Her writing style literally does it for me, okay? I don't really laugh when I read books, like I get faintly amused, but to literally get me cackling out loud, that takes insane talent. And the way she writes so cleverly with so much word plays and puns that you just can't help but laugh. So good. I wasn't the greatest fan of the dynamic between our two leads. I don't like flirtatious, charming male characters. I think they're insufferable. That's the only reason I deducted a half star, otherwise it would be a perfect 5-star book. But yeah, I can't wait to check out everything else she's already written. She has a trilogy out, kind of in the same vein as this new series of hers. I'll read that, and I do need to read Geographer's Map to Romance, as I mentioned. And now for the 8th question, which is newest fictional crush. This one, I mean, let's be so real. The current offerings of fictional men in the publishing industry are slim pickings indeed, at least in my opinion. I get just so repulsed by like 95% of them to the point where I can't even enjoy the story properly anymore. I always have to give the caveat of, oh, this book was really good except for the romantic relationship. Like, let's just erase that and this book would be a million times better. So I don't think that when I say newest fictional crush, what I mean is men who didn't disgust me and who I can imagine actually conversing with in real life. So firstly, we have Shin from The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. Love that he's so respectful and decent and serious. Turns out these are the only kind of guys I can tolerate in fiction, or real life for that matter. I think the way he treated our main character Meena in that book was just very courteous, and I like to see that. And then another guy who I thought again was pretty respectful and actually had a personality and wasn't just this brooding mountain of muscle with shadow magic. Yeah, we have Samathi from Dragonfruit. He's just a regular dude trying to save his country. Once again, very courteous, respectful, and actually has proper conversations with our main character. I thought he was a very wholesome person. And I do want to see more books, especially in fantasy and I guess romantasy, with male leads who are like this and not just creepy weirdos. And then for a much easier question, that is newest favorite character. For this, I have to say Soraya from Girl Serpent Thorn. For me, a favorite character is someone who I have to relate with like a lot. The more that they are literally like me, the more I will like them. And Soraya was that. Like every single decision that she made at crucial crossroads throughout the story were the ones that I would have made myself. I thought even though her decisions were pretty chaotic and caused a lot of issues, they were her best option at the moment, and the way she picked them was pretty rational on her part. I thought she was very relatable in her loneliness and her prickly exterior, and how she desperately craved companionship and friendship and just literally talking to people, and yet she was just cast out all the time for being different, for being monstrous, and just not being palatable to the tastes of the common populace. So yeah, just really related to her. I loved that this book was a standalone that gave her an extremely well thought out character arc, and everything that she did makes sense. Like from page 1 till the very end, you can definitely root for her, even though she's kind of an anti-hero in this. Also, bonus points because this is a Persian-inspired fantasy heavily influenced by Zoroastrian mythology, which we never see in fantasy. And then another favorite character of mine would be, once again from Dragonfruit, we have Hanale, and I just loved her work ethic and how she, again, is also a very respectful person. See, I have a thing for respectful people. She's also extremely compassionate and kind, and also has a good head on her shoulders. She's very resourceful. Once again, you just root for her throughout the entirety of the book. This is once again a standalone with a kind of nautical setting with archipelagos and sea dragons and Pacific Islander mythology, which we love to see. And now for the next question, a book that made you cry. For me, it's really difficult to cry while reading a book. I do cry more often when watching movies or TV shows, but for books, to do that for me, it has to be something very specific. And this is the book that made me cry the most this year, and that is Honey and Issue's Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jayagirdar. Now, this one, it talked about academic pressure and the expectations placed on students who really excel in their studies to be even better, to be in constant competition with themselves, to always give your best at all times, no matter how exhausting it can be. And that really resonated with me. Unlike the character in this book, Ishita, I don't face familial pressure for academics, but tie a lot of my self-worth to academics, and that's not healthy at all. So yeah, she's in a worse off situation than I am. Of course, in my case, I just have to remove my own expectations and I'll be free. In her case, she has to battle the expectations of everyone around her. Certain passages of that definitely resonated with me, and I was sobbing into my pillow at 11 p.m. Not a great look, but yeah, this also talked a lot about microaggressions and how preserving your culture can be extremely hard when everyone else is just peer pressuring you into being like them, even though it makes you uncomfortable. That I don't relate to it, but I do feel very sympathetic for our characters who have to go through that, and it made me cry out of anger and frustration on their behalf. This is an excellent YA sapphic romance for those who are looking for stories where the romance is there at the center of the story, yes, but it's also so much more than that. It talks about several social issues and really explores our main characters individually and not just when they're together. And now, in contrast to that, we have a book that made you happy. This one, I think, for me, feeling happy throughout an entire book is a pretty rare occurrence. I have to read something really funny or just really heartfelt for that to happen. And since I usually read pretty dark, depressing books, I don't find a lot of happiness most of the time. These are books that I've already mentioned about earlier in this video, so I'll just go through them. Dragon Fruit by Maki Alosier, a book that I really enjoyed. Just the setting of the story, it reminded me of Moana or the other Netflix original, The Sea Beast. These two mixed together, that would give you Dragon Fruit. I just really enjoyed being in that archipelago setting with people from different cultures, and also the whole threat of sea dragons. I love a good human-eating creature threat in my books. That makes me happy. And welcome to the Hyunamdong bookshop for all the cozy, comforting vibes. Books about books, that again always makes me happy. This one's set in a bookshop with book recommendations galore, talking about book clubs and interviews with authors. Just all the ingredients to make me feel happy for the duration that I read the book at the very least. And then The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love. Again, laugh out loud funny. This is the funniest book I've read all year. Just so good. And then this one isn't a traditionally published book, but for those who read web novels, I did read this Wang Wen from China. It's called 嫁给个死太监, or Married to an Exasperating Eunuch. Once again, literally laugh out loud funny. I was giggling throughout the entirety of this book. This is a transmigration story, and I do love those. So if you like them, you should check this out. It follows our main character Chen Hui. It's transported to this kinda imperial China-like world. It's not based on any real dynasty, but yeah, it has that vibe to it. She finds out that she's basically inhabiting the body of a woman who was given away to a eunuch by her family so that they could acquire some connections with the palace to further their trade. And she is not happy about that, especially because this woman basically tried to kill herself, and during that process her soul got dislodged, and now Chen Hui is inhabiting that body. But throughout the book, she interacts with this eunuch guy called Li Yota and finds out that he's actually not that horrible. He's actually a pretty decent guy. except when he's trying to do his quote ambition stuff so that he won't be killed by other ambitious eunuchs. And their dynamic is literally perfection. Okay, now that's what I want in real life. I love that she's the one who always initiates everything. She's the one who literally runs after him, pursues him, brings him gifts, and tries to get him to admit that he does, in fact, like her. The next prompt is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. So I don't really buy a lot of books firsthand. All of my books recently I get thrifted from secondhand bookshops. So they're not always in the greatest condition, nor are they especially beautiful books. But there are a few that I do want to show off because I am so happy that I found these at such an incredible price. Like, the bargain is to die for. Let's start off with a somewhat more basic looking one. This is a paperback. It's called What a Fish Knows by Jonathan Balcombe. And this is a non-fiction basically about fish and the neuroscience behind their brains and how that is affected by their habitats and whether they can actually understand us. Are they intelligent species? I just love how the cover looks. It has this metallic sheen in some parts. The spine is so cool too. And so is the back. It is literally blurbed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which I didn't know when I bought this, but yeah, that is such a crazy coincidence. So love this book, especially love the fact that I got it for 50 rupees, which is such a steal. I definitely think that the primary reason I find these books so beautiful is indeed their price. That's the most attractive thing about them. Next, we have The Book of Dust, the first volume, La Belle Sauvage by Philip Pullman. This is kind of a spin-off series to the author's, what is it called? The Northern Lights. This one, The Golden Compass, that trilogy. And this book is a gorgeous hardcover. Like, literally look at it. So stunning. Literally so beautiful. I got this for 150 rupees. Isn't that the most beautiful thing you've seen all day? And here we have the end papers, which are this really cool pattern. And then we have the cover itself, which just has all of these beautiful glittery golden stars on them. And so is the spine beneath the cover. Just so good. Love that I got this. Now I actually need to read The Northern Lights before I can get to this. Oh yeah, the series is called His Dark Materials. I will be reading all of them eventually. And our final one, which is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. Book, again, in like mint condition. The pages are yellowed because this is probably very old, like at least 10 years old. But I don't mind because it's so beautiful. And the main thing about it, the end papers. Like, literally, have you seen anything more stunning today in terms of end papers at the very least? I love these diagrams, and it's there on the other side too. So stunningly detailed. Like, I love this. The cover itself is pretty plain, but the end papers, oh, so beautiful. So yeah, those are my beautiful books that I wanted to show off. And now moving on to the second last prompt, that is books you need to read by the end of the year. Well, I do need to read all of my TBR. I have over 50 physical books currently, but the ones that I kind of do want to prioritize. So firstly, I have the Wings of Fire series. Do I want to take them out? It's too much of a hassle, but I'll try. The situation behind me is insecure at all. Let's do this quickly. So we have the final 5 books in the Wings of Fire series. This is the third and final arc. And this is my favorite series of all time. It's a middle grade series with anthropomorphic dragons, and it's about the politics between different dragon tribes, and there's war, and it's just really cool. This one, we're set on a whole different continent following different tribes from the ones in the previous 10 books. And I have collected these over the years since 2018, and last year I finally got all of the books. So it's a great time to binge read them, but I'm just saving them for a time when I can savor all of them. I do need to reread the original 10 too, so this is a big commitment, but I would love to read them by the end of the year. Another series that I would like to start actually is the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. So we have the first book, The Eye of the World. Then we have the second one, The Great Hunt. Yeah, it's in a different edition to the rest. And then the third book, The Dragon Reborn. I actually have all of the books in the series except for book 12 and 13. and I will eventually get them, but meanwhile, I should at least start this series because I don't want 15 books taking up my shelf space. You have never even read the first one. So yeah, this is definitely a priority. Some other books that have kind of been baking for a while in my digital TBR, we have He Who Drowned the World, which is the sequel to She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I read the first book like 2 months ago. I thought it was pretty interesting, and the ending does make me want to pick up the second book just so I can like finish the series. Because a goal of mine this year is to finish the series that I start, so this will be a good point to begin. And I also want to check out Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, extremely lauded retelling of the Ramayana from the perspective of Kaikeyi, who is kind of a villain in the original telling. Though to me, she has always been extremely in the right for everything that she did. So I would love to see my thoughts on the character made into a book. I'm just super excited for that. And then we have a very cute YA romance, which is Academic Rivals. That I love that trope. It is I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. This is again one that has been on my TBR for a while, so I need to get to it soon. The final one that I need to read is The Ghost Bride by Yang Zhe Chu. This is a historical fantasy set in 19th century Malaysia, and it follows the Chinese custom of a ghost bride. So basically, when a person dies, like too young or under mysterious circumstances, then a woman from like a poor destitute family is chosen to basically be his bride and either actually follow him into the afterlife, like she's sacrificed, or just kind of live in the house for like a few years until the soul of the dead person is appeased, basically. And this follows a girl who is chosen for being a ghost bride, and it follows her actually going to the underworld and some crazy stuff going on. And the main reason I want to read this is because there is a Netflix adaptation of this book, and I desperately want to watch that series, and I would love to have actually read the book before I do that. Speaking of adaptations, we have the final prompt of this tag, and that is my favorite book to movie adaptation this year. So I don't actually have a movie adaptation. What I do have are TV shows based on books that I really enjoyed. Firstly, we have the Lockwood and Co series. It's on Netflix, and these are the books that it's based on. So it only had one season before Netflix cancelled it. Like, how dare they do that to literally all of the good shows out there? So these are books 3 and 4, which I haven't read yet, but I have read books 1 and 2, which the first season is based on. And it does take a lot of liberties with the original story, but they do keep like the core things the same and just kind of tweak some of the minor details, add a bit of backstory to some characters, even minor ones. And I think those changes are pretty welcome for the most part. The only complaint that I have is that the books are like way scarier than the show was. Like the ghosts in the show are kind of goofy. Like the jump scares do scare you, but for the most part, they're just funny to look at. But in the books, it's a middle grade horror series, and yet I was terrified. Like I couldn't sleep well when I read this right before I slept because I would be just so paranoid the whole night long. Another show that I watched this year, I haven't read the book that it's based on yet, but I will definitely get to it soon. And that is A Tale Dark and Grim. The books that it's based on are by Adam Gidwitz. The show is part of, once again, one of my favorite subgenres of fantasy, that is fairy tale mashups. And it's kind of a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, where we follow these two kids who discover that their parents, the king and the queen, cut off their heads and then sewed them back on. And they're pretty horrified, understandably, by that. So they run away from the palace and try to find a proper, loving family who won't, cut off their heads. And each episode kind of focuses on them trying to find the perfect family for them. And it kind of incorporates different grim fairy tales. And I do mean the grim fairy tales, because this is actually really gory and horrifying for a middle grade show. Like this is aimed at 7 to 9-year-olds, extremely gory. But I loved how they preserved that dark eldritch element of the real grim fairy tales in the show, and I'm certain those elements are definitely played up a lot more in the books. I'm hoping that the books are significantly different from the series, because I do want to experience the same story but with more additions to it when I read the books. The show also made me cry in certain episodes because the sibling bond between Hansel and Gretel, I don't know, it just really triggered something within me, and I was like, oh damn, this is really sad. So yeah, that's all of the prompts as part of the mid-year book tag. I'm so glad that I was able to do this for the second time, and I hope that I'll return the year after this with even more books to update you all about. Until then, stay safe and happy reading. Catch you later in my next video.